I just got back from the Cardano summit, and while I was there, I finally had a chance to sit down with the team from Charli3. We had a fantastic conversation talking about what the project is, what's available now, and what they're excited about moving forward. Now that we have a real Oracle live on Cardano, the whole conversation left me really excited about all the things that can be built, and I think you're probably going to feel the same way. I hope you enjoy. Welcome back to Woodland Pools, and welcome everybody to the Cardano Summit 2022. We finally have a chance to sit down in person with the Charli3 team. Thank you guys so much for sitting down with me.
Absolutely.
It's an absolute pleasure. We recently did a video covering Charli3 at a very high level, but I thought since we're all in person, it would be a great opportunity to sit down and hear from the project members themselves on what you guys are excited about and then what we got sort of coming forward. So
sounds good. Throw it at us.
All right. So maybe just to get started at a high level, right? For those that didn't see that video or haven't heard yet, what is Charli3?
You want to take that one away?
Well, in essence, Charli3, what we do is we provide Oracle services for Cardano. And an Oracle, for people who don't quite know, is basically we take real-life data and we put it onto the blockchain. This might seem like a fairly simple concept, but in practice it's pretty difficult to do because there's a number of aspects that have to be considered. One of them is security, for starters. If I were to take some data and I put it on the blockchain, and that data is then used by a different project for their smart contracts to sell an NFT or whatever, they have to be really sure that the price I'm putting up there is actually correct, or the data I'm putting up there is actually correct, and not something that I can later use to basically mint NFTs for free or steal some funds or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
So security is paramount, and that is only one of the aspects. It has to be reliable and
There's a lot of, I don't know, more in-depth
details,
things.
yeah,
A lot of
more
details.
nuance, right?
Yeah, it's like our oracles are incredibly complex on the tech side, and a lot of people don't know it. It's a third party, right? We only sell to other projects, so it's not. We don't have a front-end user case like a wallet or a trading DEX or something like that.
Right.
So it is a little bit harder to explain what we do, but that is the good high level for sure.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's also an incredibly important part of the ecosystem for all projects as well. So
absolutely,
it's just like really complex to do, really difficult to do right, and it's really important to have.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most important part.
And so, and that's great because you already covered my second question was what is an oracle? So perfect. But so then along those lines, when you're saying about that, that data is streaming, I'm curious then. So for when you're doing that, is there a certain cadence of like time of like do you try and like get the data out there every block or every certain amount of like?
That's a very good question.
So like how, because that way for apps, I imagine also your consumers might have different needs for the granularity of time. So how do you kind of determine that and how granular or high level do you go?
So you're right, it totally depends on the project and what their needs are. You know, some people want an update every 30 seconds, which is just ridiculous because it costs money every update, right?
Sure.
It'll cost money. But currently our community feeds that we put out, and these community feeds are Catalyst funded and Charli3 funded, so nobody has to pay for them. And it's easier, but we run that at a heartbeat of every 1 hour. So we do a new feed on chain every hour. But that's variable. Like, some people only need one every day or once a month, or if it's like a sports feed or like different type of thing, it's not price feed, right? Maybe you only need that for that game or over the period of like the World Cup or something, and then it ends, right? So it's completely separate and it's variable on every project need. But it can be factored to whatever their needs are requiring.
And I will add one detail as well. It is 1 hour heartbeat, which means that there's an update every hour at least.
Yeah.
But in the case of exceptional market circumstances, such as the price going up or going down, way more than normal, we do have the ability to trigger an immediate update. That can happen way sooner than every hour. So it is a little bit flexible, but at least every hour.
Yeah.
So currently it's set to an hour, and so and the other thing too, right? Like how we started the conversation when you're saying, okay, this is what an oracle is, right? Currently, there are oracles on other blockchains, and there's other projects that specifically focus on this, like Chainlink and things like that. How do you see yourself as Charli3 being different than those projects, and both maybe in terms of what Charli3 as a project brings, but also maybe differences that you've seen on, like as a project, why you decided to launch on Cardano, and how working with Cardano sort of makes that different?
Right. So I'll start with the Cardano question.
Sure.
Just on a high level, I mean, myself and Jonas at least are kind of higher level academics. We really like that approach that Cardano was doing to begin with, right, in the early stages. And on a business level, we chose Cardano because it's a completely different code base,
Yeah.
and there's a market there
Yep.
that can't be
Sure.
touched by Chainlink because
Sure.
it's a different code base,
Yep.
right? So it was a great opportunity if we can make it work, you know?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
can
No,
say a lot.
absolutely, yeah.
So,
Well, there's a void to fill there, right? Versus
Yeah.
trying to be like just another person who's fighting for that space.
Exactly. So
Right.
we kind of took that as a first mover advantage in the space with kind of a monopoly that we could grab, which we have managed so far, which is great. But past that, like what makes us different than say Chainlink currently is the architecture is kind of the same. However, it's the factors of what's on Cardano, like especially
Right.
now with the Vasil updates, you know, reference scripts and line datums, reference inputs. That makes Oracle function a lot better and chain function a lot easier. And that's kind of the main differences that I see as far as a high level goes. But you can expand on that
Yeah,
if you need to.
I feel like we're inverting the talking points because you're talking about the technical aspects of it, and I'm going to say now that I think that another crucial aspect for us is that we're working directly with this project. We're an up and coming project basically,
Yeah.
so we're able to really interface directly with these other Cardano projects in a way that I think a larger Oracle such as Chainlink really can't do. I'm sure they could at one point. I'm not sure if they ever did, but we're able to work directly with these projects from day one.
Yeah.
And our involvement with the CDA, for example, is a good example of this. We're working together with all other projects to kind of build standards and
Yeah.
community.
Culture is another big thing, like in our branding. We just did a really big thing to really hone in on what are we going to do, what kind of services we want to provide, even just on a psychological side to our customers. You know, the help, like he's saying, actually being there with them from day one. And it's being transparent, it's being open, it's being flexible in our approach to people, which, as he said, Chainlink does not do, and other Oracle systems currently don't do. And this is what we've heard from them. So past just the tech, it's also like what's our company focus and vision on customer relations, and that's kind of a larger aspect of why you would trust us over someone else.
And that's interesting too, right? Because that is sort of that like constant paradigm that you see, that the difference between a large established company that has this runway and has this sort of like maybe its own ecosystem around it versus like a small and nimble, you know, company that's just getting started, is that there's strengths and weaknesses to both. But being small, you can kind of say, okay, well, what's actually needed and what can you do? And you can pivot quickly and do like new solutions quickly and work, you know, with specific launch partners who represent a larger need, and then you can have that fast iteration back and forth with them to start filling that need and make sure you filled it appropriately. Right?
Yeah, and it's the innovation along that way as well, whereas the other
Right.
ones aren't really doing much new. It's just, here's our customer base, this is
Right.
what we provide, here you go. There's a great Office episode where they kind of go over the same thing. It's like the competing paper companies, and one guy goes, oh, well, I can just go with these guys. They're a lot cheaper. Why would I go with you? You're smaller. And then in that moment, while they're talking about it, they get him a customer on the phone. It's just like, that's why, because we work directly with the customer right away. You have us right away. It's a little more expensive, but you get shit done.
Right.
You know, so that's kind of our approach, at least at the moment. We'll see if we get bigger and it's too much.
Well,
to
sure,
handle.
well, that'll be a good problem to have when you get to the point where you're like, okay, now we know we're this big that we have to figure out what we still have time to keep building, right?
Yeah, but if a larger project like Chainlink were to move into Cardano right away, you wouldn't have that from them. It would still just be that big corporate thing,
Right.
and we're not at that stage as an ecosystem right now.
Right.
We have to work individually with people.
Yeah, I think it's kind of illustrated that they haven't moved in yet because there is a need in the Cardano ecosystem, and they are officially partnered with Cardano somehow. But
Sort of.
they're not really providing data,
Right.
so that is kind of emblematic of their approach. I feel like they're not really caring that much. I don't want to cuss on your. But yeah, and I think in our case we have the difference here with the community feeds, where we're taking the other approach and we kind of see a need where many projects will probably need, for example, ADA USD. So we're making that a community feed that anyone can use
for free.
For free, yeah.
Yeah, which is a big deal, like subsidizing those. And again, this is helping the little guy, right?
Right.
Because like I said, there is a cost to these things.
Right,
Yeah.
sure.
So if you eliminate that cost for early startups,
Right.
they can implement and get their systems up faster to be bringing revenue, which brings adoption, which
Yeah.
brings more liquidity,
Yeah.
everything, right? So we see that on the base level and where it trickles down. So sorry for running that way too long.
No, not at all. I mean, this is why we're here, right? I'm really like, I love it when it's more sort of conversational like this. Like, no, that's perfect.
Sweet.
Because then along those lines, right? The other thing I was thinking about is, and I'm glad that in that long walk they had there, like you sort of gave me an idea of how there's two different parts to it, right? So the first thing that I was thinking was in terms of, okay, well, what feeds are available today, Right, but then when you said that, made me think, okay, but then moving forward, not only what feeds are you planning on adding, but then which ones will continue to be like available to the community versus the ones that'll be sort of behind like a paywall, that'll be like a contractual thing like that. So like, what are your plans on where that can go?
So right now, as far as the community feeds go, because it costs money, we just set like the hour, like we said, the hour heartbeat. And if it goes more than that, then it may have to pay for it.
Sure.
You know, less than that is fine. Sure. So the first fees we'll have is the ADA USD price, and then Bitcoin ADA, ETH ADA, and then
cool.
So those will be the community feeds, and those will all be free for people. And we can run that for what, like a year and a half? Currently?
A year minimum.
Yeah,
right.
Currently, and then we'll still pull in more to that fund to try and run it as long as possible.
Sure.
Past that, though, because those are the main ones that are the projects actually need to use. Like many people need those.
So with those then, like I know ADA USD is there now, and when do you think the other ones would be roughly? I don't want to like stick to timelines here, but I'm just trying to think in terms of like orders of magnitude, right?
It's
like
more so when people need it.
Okay.
Because nobody's really asked for it currently.
Sure.
ADA USD is really the main one,
right.
say for like NFT platforms to have a standard price of ADA instead of just pulling it from one DEX, and people are like, oh, but what is the real price? You know? But so nobody really needs those yet. So we'll ramp up to put those in when we need it. And like we're kind of ready. You know, it's just there's no point paying for that yet if we don't have to.
Yeah, no, exactly. Totally.
Yeah. So
anyway, sorry I cut you off, but then you were talking about the other things.
For the next things for payment is more unique sets of data. So like say the Goat Tribe NFT project, they're making a NFT marketplace, and they want to use their own native grass token to do that. No one else needs grass token price.
Sure.
So there's no point in us paying for it. So they would have to pay for their specifications on that one. The only ones we're giving out for free are the ones that are actually more needed, and that's because of basically because of reference inputs, which you can talk about why that's the case.
I think that when it comes to reference UTXOs, as I call them, basically the big thing about that is that let's take one step back maybe. On Cardano, one initial issue with the model of Cardano is that there can be something called transaction congestion, where multiple transactions attempt to use the same piece of data.
Right.
The data has to be consumed, and then it has to be recreated, and the next transaction has to use the new piece of data.
Right.
But with reference UTXOs, that problem goes away. Multiple transactions can use the same piece of data and just read it, and not actually consume it. So that allows us to use the same feed for multiple transactions concurrently.
Right.
And probably also something that I want to touch on, multiple feeds can be used by one feed can be used by multiple projects.
Yeah.
Right.
So if we have, for example, several projects need the same kind of data, such as the community feeds, but they need it at a higher rate than they could probably afford individually, what we could set up is some kind of arrangement where they all pool funds and pay for the same feed that is shared between all of them.
Or a subscription model or something.
Yeah,
Same idea.
Interesting.
That would probably be the way it works, yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then using reference UTXOs, they can all consume it, they can reference it, as is the appropriate term, concurrently without any issues, without stepping on each other's toes or anything like that. So it's a really nice model from that level.
Well, and those reference inputs, right? I mean, and that's why you guys are waiting on Vasil, right? Because there was really no. I can't imagine there would be a very feasible way to launch an Oracle
without that.
Whether everybody having to fight for the same input to consume it and spit it back out, and you serialize that whole process.
Exactly.
If you're stuck that way,
it was
right?
very challenging.
Yeah, and we kind of had that figured out at one point, and then we knew the Vasil updates were coming, and we were like, scrap that, and redo everything.
Thank God.
Because otherwise, like your consumers, I imagine, though I guess this is a technical question we can get into at some other point, but I imagine like what you would have had to have done was basically set up a queuing system, right? Where you're kind of like, wait in line, and then when the next person spits the UTXO backs out, then you can get it, and it kind of goes down the line.
We had a different approach where we had kind of like an octopus approach where each oracle had a multitude of output values, so you could pick a random value and you would hope that you'd get it, basically.
Yeah.
So it was a mess, like terrible compared to what we can do now.
Right. Yeah. So that's fantastic, and that's one of the things that we talked about before, right? About the kinds of projects that get unlocked with reference scripts and reference datums and things like that, and so that's really great that you guys are able to take advantage of that and finally actually get it launched out. And so, so for those things now we talked about sort of like the ones that would be available, the ones that are sort of behind the sort of a subscription type model. But in that, we've still been talking more about like price feed type data.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other kinds of things? I think like one of the ones you hear about a lot is like certifiable randomness, to be able to have like randomness in games. An example people always give is like sport, like you were saying, like sporting scores or weather or whatever else. And kind of what are your thoughts in terms of, and I'll leave it sort of open-ended for you, in terms of...
It's pretty easy at this point.
When those might come in, but also if one is more particularly challenging than the other, or from a priority standpoint, when you think you might might want to approach each of those?
The way that we were looking at it before, which we weren't sure how we were going to do because it just seemed unfeasible, like say for weather or sporting results, is that those things only come up as like, say an insurance company wanted the weather situation to know that this event actually happened for a claim, right?
Sure.
That's just a one-time event. Why would you have a continuous weather feed? That's just wasting so much money, and they're not going to want to pay for that. We're not going to want to set it up. It's too much effort.
Right.
So we had a different idea of what's called an on-demand Oracle, which is basically like a truth fail, like or whatever, truther or not.
Right. Yeah. Just like a Boolean, yes or no. Right?
Yeah. Yes or no. There you go.
Right. Yeah.
Standpoint, which is an off-chain transaction, basically just checks, is this validated or not? Is this correct? And so now you can do that on an initial, request just for that one time, that one piece of data. But yeah, this is where I fail on the the technical aspect. So
so that's kind of a shift from the feed approach that we have currently with the continuous feed.
It's a new product.
It's a completely different product. And what we do basically is we can take this is a very broad topic, so I'm just trying to figure out how to describe it. Mm-hmm. Basically, we can take any kind of arbitrary request. We can validate it off-chain in a distributed way so that we still retain the security of using multiple nodes. Mm-hmm. And then we can, all of these nodes can sign off on the truth of the validation, whatever it be. For example, the weather being a particular storm or something at a particular time for insurance purposes.
Or a sporting result or something.
A sporting result, for example. And then all of these nodes can validate this, sign off on the transaction, and then the transaction can be delivered to the blockchain for a one-off
transaction.
So submission basically, and the data can be used for whatever, updating an NFT, release some funds for an insurance case, release some winnings.
Yep. Liquidations. All this kind of stuff. And
it's difficult to kind of encapsulate it in a few words without giving several different examples.
Right.
But the key point of it is that it's a very flexible system. It can be used for anything, like the insurance case, sports case, like it all. The only thing we need to change is what we're checking.
Right.
Yeah. But the rest of the system is the same. Multiple nodes perform the check, sign off that they have checked it and it's valid, provide the data to the submitter, be it end user or an automated system, and then it can go on the blockchain and can be verified as having been validated off-chain.
And the big difference there is that it's not a continuous heartbeat; it's just a one-off transaction. So,
it's more of a pull versus like a push, right?
Exactly. It can happen regularly. It can happen often.
Yeah, it can.
Or it can happen very rarely. The system is flexible and can handle both.
That's cool.
And that's
in a flat fee structure.
And that's actually our biggest request from other projects. The biggest excitement is having that product because now they can be more flexible.
Yeah.
And in
their cost model and how they predict how much they want to spend. Yeah.
Not great for us, but better.
Right.
For them.
Sure. Well, but at least you have that you're building that relationship in terms of how things come in.
And we have an arsenal of products, and then the VRF is something we actually just talked to some guys about doing that, but it's always been on our roadmap. And if people want a more current roadmap, we'll have probably by the time this comes out, our new website will be up, so that'll all be there.
Perfect.
And we also just did a interview with AMB Crypto that was posted. It's on our Twitter and stuff that goes through our roadmap and this new product and what we have coming up and what we've been working on. So that's also really good information from a regular person to read.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And it's funny though, because like we were just talking about how like the weather is an example where it's like, okay, it's like pull based, like when I need to know like did a storm happen or whatever. But I was just kind of brainstorming as you were thinking that like it could be kind of a fun thing for certain kinds of metaverses and things to like have like the weather in like that, like reflect what's actually happening outside, or you could maybe have like
so we've talked
it's a certain kind of randomness too, right? Where you're kind of just like, okay, like is it raining or is it sunny outside, and have that reflect an event in a game? I don't know. That just popped into my head. I thought
we've talked about that specific use case within games before, and you could have it mimic a certain biome, an average weather biome, which then changes the aspects of the game.
Right.
In a smart NFT or dynamic NFT, which we can.
Oh, that's even cooler.
Right. So you carry that around, and then you can implement that into your own personal area and change the weather.
So fun.
Right. Yeah. So then that can change. Like that metadata keeps getting updated based on our feeds that are continuous, right? Which would be a function of the game that pays for that. So that's one thing for sure. But other things could change based on sporting results or whatever else you want to update. So that's dynamic or smart NFTs is another function of Oracle data that can be implemented in different ways.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, I think. You know?
Yeah, no, it sounds really exciting.
But
I mean, the more
whether or not they want to build weather into their game is a different story.
well, I mean, but again, it's, the nice thing is that you're new, so you kind of you're just building what people are asking for, and then kind of go from there. And then once you've built it, then that product's available.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You know,
for sure. And that's what we're going for. We're just kind of seeing what the ecosystem needs and building that out. Like initially, it was all price feeds.
Yeah.
Everybody needed that. Like
Right.
I had the idea for the one-off validation thing a very long time ago, and nobody wanted it. And then
Right.
recently they started coming back and saying, "Oh, we kind of want this product," and we're like, "Oh shit, okay."
It turns
then
out once
redo.
you tell people about it, they start like
Yeah.
you just did.
Yeah.
The gears start turning, and they're like, "Oh, I could use it that way and that way and that way," and then suddenly
Yeah.
it's very very much in demand.
And the biggest thing we're doing with this new product is with Atala Prism and many other projects like Summon, Book.io, Student Reader, and EndMaker. You know, a lot of projects involved. And what this does is it will validate like student accomplishments, basically
Yep.
a course completion
Yep.
or a grade completion, and be able to pay out scholarships from a DAO. And
Oh, cool.
we validate that student accomplishment by reading basically the API of the student or the education ministry's records on these people.
Cool.
And Atala Prism has the identifiable ID basically that they implement that the student requests, hey, I'm going to apply for this scholarship, here's my grade, here's my course completion,
Right.
and then we are able to validate that. And people go, oh, well, why do you need the Oracle for that? Because the education ministry could just publish that on chain. But
Sure.
then somebody with a single set, you know, now it's just a single set of data
Right.
out there. And somebody could come in and just that up and empty the DAO because they have 10,000 registered accounts.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You know, so for us with the node operation, like we're checking it many multiple times to make sure. So if one of them messes up, we have redundancy. So
Nice.
it keeps it all good, and that opens up equality as far as getting scholarships out to students, and also onboarding them to a idea of what crypto is, because they have to make a wallet and get into it and read all this stuff. So
Right.
it works both ways.
Yeah, which is a whole other conversation about the
Totally.
wallets and the onboarding, and Patrick and I from EndMaker talked about that, about
yeah.
like how do you even get people on board and then transition from custody wallets to like having their own. That's like a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But-
I want to add one more thing as well. When we're dealing with student data and things like that, or identity in general, another key advantage of the off-chain transaction validators
Yep.
is that the data doesn't have to go on the blockchain. Because
Yeah.
as I'm sure most people know, once data goes on the blockchain,
Yeah.
it's public by nature. It's
Right.
on the blockchain. Everyone can read it. But that's not something you want when you're dealing with private identities. You're dealing with
Right.
student identities or know your customer kind of
Yeah.
identity.
They'll just say
data.
yes, they qualify. And that's
Yeah,
it.
exactly
Not like
that.
yes, they have this grade. You know?
Yeah,
Right.
the nodes can deal with the private data privately, and then just put on the blockchain that yes or no,
Green
like
light,
true or
red
false.
light. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is nice for keeping that
Yeah, it's-
anonymity, I guess,
It's
or
needed,
privacy.
like absolutely needed in the modern era of privacy law. Like
Yeah.
it's crucial.
But then you just have to trust our system that it's right as well.
Well, well, so when you say an off-chain validator, are you meaning like literally like the validator script, like the off-chain like Plutus code, or is it just like a separate like
No, I,
just a validation that's just like a separate check that's different than an off-chain
when
smart
I say
contract
off-chain validator, I mean a Charli
Okay.
validator node.
Got it.
It should
Okay.
be
I see.
complete.
Yeah, it's another thing that people ask all the time is like, are we dealing with Cardano node operators, like Cardano nodes,
Right.
with our node network? And
Sure.
it's like, no, it's completely separate node
Okay.
network that we've built and created. I know you guys do use other nodes for
Yeah,
different
I mean
reasons.
there is kind of an overlap because this
Yeah.
is a service that a Cardano node could provide if it had been designed
Yeah.
slightly differently. So
But
Right.
it's not. So yeah, we're not using the current network nodes.
Right.
We have our own network.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then with that, right, like you'd mentioned how a lot of these things have sort of worked out nicely, and you're like, oh, and this is now easy because we have this, and the other thing, right? And also too, things have gotten easier since we were moved over to Vasil, but before we had some sort
Sure.
of complications on how you're going to do these things. What are some challenges, that you still see ahead in terms of things that you want to build, but that might still be kind of challenging, that's maybe on the longer term roadmap, that are things that you're still working on figuring out that you'd like to get to?
Yeah, I mean, it's really just the things holding us back right now is one, ecosystem is just down in general, right? Like it's just having the like resources to actually build up what we would want. Like I know
sure.
that's not really what your question
Yeah.
is, but it is a major factor.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
if we had a larger team, we could look at more. We could do more
Right.
R&D. We could implement more. But the other factor is actually just the tooling. I mean, Cardano and Plutus is a brand new language. Not everything's out there all the time.
Right.
Things constantly change or break and have to be refactored. And there's a lot of projects working on their own solutions for different things because they still have to keep growing. You can't rely just on IOG. But one of the things is a lot of the tooling for the implementations that we currently have.
And just to get a little bit more esoteric and technical as well, I think one challenge that will be facing Cardano soon in the future is probably the way transactions work currently, the way they are priced when it comes to fee. Yeah. There is no real way to put your transaction at the front of the queue by paying an additional fee in Cardano.
Like Ethereum has with gas fees and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is something they've talked about still at a very high level of how they're going to want to approach that, but we've still not necessarily seen anything even close to
like Hydra is supposed to manage that with increasing block size, like infinitely increasing block size. Like you want it to be ahead of the queue, and then it just increases the block size, so you're actually not paying more, but it takes up a less percentage of that. Yeah. And it's all over the place.
It's a challenging problem. It's a difficult one.
Yeah. So that is one, because it does make oracles hard to use as well.
Yeah,
because,
I mean,
it's expensive. So.
We need to put our transactions on the blockchain soon because we provide an updated piece of data. Mm-hmm. So if we have to wait, then we can't really control that. That is a challenge for us. And many other projects are going to have a similar challenge.
That's a great point. I never even thought about that. So if your whole idea is that you want to be like,
right now,
your synchronicity, you want to be like, even if, fast or precise, where you're like, you can always expect us at this time or whatever.
Yeah.
Reliable.
But if it happens to be a congested network at that time, then you have to wait for it to clear, even though you may have submitted earlier. That's an interesting thing.
Yeah, the reference inputs definitely does keep the congestion down, because now you're not publishing many UTXOs, but you're only doing one, and it's infinitely readable from, right? So that does help the congestion, but who's to say how congested the chain might get from other stuff?
Totally. I mean,
it's not just us.
Hopefully
ours just helps a little bit.
Hopefully it is going to be congested because it's going to be popular. But then when it becomes popular, then we're dealing with a new set of problems.
Yeah. So maybe we talked about potentially to help that problem out is building our own layer 2 side chain, just so all of our transactions are on a non-congested network.
Yeah.
But that then is more resources and more time and refactoring and all of this. So
or you go with something, as you suggested earlier, a queue kind of system, and everyone has to kind of adopt a queue mentality.
Right.
But that kind of makes things more slow, so it's not really desirable, but it's a possible way to do it.
So. Cool. So sort of to start wrapping up here, everything that we've been talking about, and to be fair, the main purpose of an oracle is to be consumed by other commercial entities, right? But just out of curiosity, because it's kind of like, I'm just wondering, do you guys have, or do you plan to have, anything that just a regular Cardano consumer can use, even if it was just sort of for fun, just to see a live feed or whatever? I don't even know necessarily what that product would be, but I'm just curious if you guys had thought about
the biggest
a B2C kind of thing.
We've already kind of talked about is the dynamic NFTs. If you're holding an NFT that has the Oracle data being implemented, that it changes your NFT or changes your implementation into a game,
right?
That is a B2C situation. Sure, you're still B2B implementation when you implement that data off the beginning, but the user is actually seeing the results of that, whereas other people, they don't. It's not as apparent. When you see a price feed when you're trading, it's you don't realize that comes from us. It's just Indigo has that price, it's that price.
Right.
You don't know it's us doing it. But if you know that price feed is being, that dynamic NFT is being changed by Oracle data that's putting onto your thing, now you know that that's the case.
That's fair.
As far as past that, there's not really many implementations as far as Oracle data to a customer.
Once we have the node and the feed portal up and running, you might be able to go there and see our feeds being updated live with the past data.
Right.
Yeah.
The nodes being used for it and things like that. But that's still a little bit in the future. It's not something that is available on the webpage right now, but it will be soon.
Yeah, we're trying to figure that one out, obviously, but that comes with a lot of documentation and making sure it all
we
works.
just have to make sure we have the core product done to our satisfaction.
I mean, that's more sugar on top, right? Because those aren't even your paying customers, right? But that's
they're just stealing data for free.
Well, but I think that to a certain degree, there's a certain what's the word, a certain kind of I don't know, enjoyment or entertainment factor that even just somebody who's just an investor in ADA, who's a fan of Charli3, would think it was fun, even if not using it, just but going to some kind of live feed that you had and be oh, cool, so these are the kind of things that they're feeding these days, and just seeing it just tick by.
Oh yeah,
I think could be fun.
We do have kind of that up right now to show that everything gets updated and you can watch it on Block Explorer.
Oh, okay.
Because
I did it in a Cardano scan and dug in and you could see the datums and stuff. But I mean,
it's there, but that's not super entertaining.
That's my point. great. So I didn't know if it was like if there's any plans to like it's just more just for fun really, just to see it kind of there. But I think you guys are more in the let's build and get real, immediate problems solved, and we'll get to the fun things later.
I
just had an idea. Like how the block explorer, and they have the blocks and like it falls down and it has a bunch of mini blocks for however many transactions that was.
I was
Be
just
like
thinking the same thing.
80 USD feed, and it could have blocks for however many consumptions had from that one reference. So it's a visual. I see what you're saying. That could be cool, but like also just more time.
Yeah.
It would be cool to have like a demo thing on the webpage. You can just go there and just see the updates go
past. You
past.
Put that in the dev portal.
We'll add it to the list.
Yeah, at the end.
I'm sure it's a short list, so no problem, right?
It's very short.
Yeah. Cool. So with that, kind of it's an open-ended question to wrap up. What are you guys most excited about? And this can either be for Charli3 specifically, or for Cardano moving forward, and how that affects you guys, or sort of what are the couple things that you guys are most excited about that's coming up?
Yeah, to me, it's just kind of synonymous with our project. Just like we said, most of the major projects are reliant on our feeds and our function. Like Meldon, Indigo, and other folks.
Yep.
Or just oracles in general. And so for me, it's just really seeing our product really start having implementation, like our first integrators going live and showing that the ecosystem is actually working, because that will boost up other people, and boost up the ecosystem to have more apps live. To me, they're kind of working the same. I don't mean to toot our own horn, but we are a little bit, needed. So to me, it's really just getting the major milestone for us, especially the dev team, is the first integration to show it's working, which hopefully is EndMaker. And that's my biggest yes moment for the near future.
Sure.
Yep, I agree.
Same thing.
You said what I was going to say, so 100%.
Why are you even here?
Well, and it's funny that with that ended up coming out at the very end of our conversation, because I think something we kind of may have just glossed over as a given is that you guys are the first Oracle on Cardano, right? And so the
launched
fact
last month.
Yeah. I remember literally that's when we did the overview video. It was right after it actually launched, and I was looking through blocks. I'm like, oh look, you can see the price feed. So so I guess that's a great spot to end it. Congratulations on getting the project live.
Thanks very much.
It unlocks.
That's all him.
Yeah, well, it unlocks at an ecosystem level just a whole other range of opportunities now of other projects. The same way how you guys were waiting for Vasil, so many projects were waiting for an Oracle like Charli3, and it's just so cool to actually see it live. So thank you guys so much for the time.
Much.
I really appreciate it. Yeah. If you guys have any other questions for the Charli3 team, let us know in the comments down below. And if nothing else, we'll see you next week.
See ya.
See ya.